Hey everybody, welcome to Base. I'm joined today with Not Dan. Not Dan, you want to introduce yourself to some of the people? And there's already people in chat.
Yeah, what's up? I am not Dan. Um, I'm a cartoon dog, and that's it. I don't do anything. I am just I'm a nobody.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, your profile says that you're a security researcher. You promise. I mean, but anyway, security research and privacy go hand in hand, and that's one of the things that I've been trying to teach people was the importance of privacy. So having people who are really careful about those kind of things, especially from the infosec world. Whereas most people that come on to these types of shows are only talking about their shit ICO or like DeFi or something. But the goal of this is to educate people that software is not like a silver bullet. There's always attack vectors. So raising awareness of OPSEC. I know we're both pretty bad about it at times, but the importance of it is there.
Yeah, I definitely, I guess I would consider myself bad at OPSEC now. I used to be like almost obsessed with it, to the point where it was unhealthy. But, after a certain point of having your name published,
Hard not to.
you stop caring so much about OPSEC and you work on disinformation.
Yes. And a lot of people don't get that, right? Like a lot of people don't understand for good OPSEC, you're going to be presented with making hard choices about disclosures of certain things, right? Like everybody thinks in their world it's just going to be like everybody's hunky dory, but you got to really treat in some cases the world as adversarial because it very much is.
Yeah. Yeah, the world in general, you mean?
Yeah, like society, you go out there and people don't realize how much dangers and perils and just in using their debit card at a store can be. All you need is
Agreed, yeah.
an RFID reader and a little bit of know-how, and hell, you can do that shit with nothing more than a Raspberry Pi and be just fine.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, I've been meaning to get my Raspberry Pi going, so thanks for the reminder. No reason at all.
Hey man,
I I find a lot of the black hat stuff that people do that targets people to not be so cool, but
yeah.
it's still the attacks are interesting, and so it's an interesting world we live in. I know there's that ancient proverb or whatever, may you live in interesting times, and we do. And we're living in hell. And that's all there is to it.
Privacy invaded dystopian hell of technology, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean, the Verger just said everyone is in a single bad election from being labeled a terrorist. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, literally, whether it's the Dems or the Republicans in power, they've been really gung ho about labeling people even remotely involved in infosec at times as being terroristic. Like they put us on watch list. They can say whatever
Oh
they
yeah,
want, but the FOIA request will show hey, you're on 6 watch lists or 7 watch lists, and this kind of stuff, and you're like, and then you have to take the steps back, and remember that there are times when the rallying cries we all work together, and then there are times when like this Earn It Act and everything else, where people got to band together to, not approve of the Earn It Act.
yeah. We should talk about that. What can you give even
TLDR.
yeah, TLDR.
So basically, it's a pork-bellied act that they're going to break encryption. It's done by Lindsey Graham, if I recall, and some others.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
very about privacy.
Yeah, but basically it's going to break encryption, and the EFF and a bunch of other people are really pushing against it. And so is the Tor project and some others. I mean, obviously, they're saying that violates the Constitution and all this other stuff. But it basically is going to be used to undermine the power in cryptography, or encryption specifically, not necessarily cryptography. But I mean, we already seen what can happen when a little bit of fuckery happens with like Heartbleed, right? Can you imagine when we have to start intentionally crippling things?
Well, we also, I mean, to that point, in a way, we also see what happens when regimes or governments are able to willy-nilly crack encryption and have control over encryption. Iran, Iraq, all these Middle Eastern nations that are cracking down on their citizens that dare protest. We're a step away from that at that point. If we don't have privacy, our nation and North America, I'd argue, even Canadians and everybody over here, we're rebels by nature.
Yeah.
That's literally how our nation was founded. I think it's healthy to disagree and distrust your government, at least to a certain level, and or at least question authority, right?
We're being taught at a young age now not to even do it. I mean, when I was a kid, it was a thing, right? You went to computer class, but it was always like if you understood any bit of Unix, of Linux, then you were they obviously were in Novell, so you were trying your best to have a little fun, but then you're scolded. You're taught today to only work within the confines of what they give you. I mean,
yeah.
Let's face it. Like, I'll be honest with you that I really see the next generation of people pushing boundaries are in for a rude awakening as to understanding how some of this stuff works, because they're not being taught. They're not being taught like how radios work. They're not being taught how signal processing and things like that work. Those are important things, especially in today's time, to understand.
Yeah, I would agree. I think not only are they not being taught that stuff, well, they're being taught it, I guess, if you go in deep to the to college degrees and stuff like that, but you're not being taught it out of passion, right? Like, maybe it was just that our generation coming up, our generation being really old people that we are, but computers and technology and all that stuff was new, right? Like, it never existed before. Cell phones didn't exist, and so all of that stuff was like, whoa, this is super cool. This is like, there's nothing to equate it to at this moment in time, because there's nothing like it, right? Like, the internet and computers were revolutionary and changed. We got to watch a crossover in history that not many in this world will see, that came up after the fact.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that people don't, looking back at it now, do I wish I would have done more exploring? Yes. Did I do a fair share? Yes. Do I want to go into details? Some I can, some I can't. But
right. Statute of limitations. May not on the others.
Yes, exactly. So be careful. But yeah, like, phone freaking was a thing, and like a lot of people didn't realize. Like kids today, you're like phone freaking. Like, yeah, back in the day, before you had just the portable digital, cordless phone you have in your pocket, and I tell people that, and they're like, it doesn't work that way. And I'm like, literally, it calls a beacon every couple of seconds. Literally, it routes through it. Yeah, it's cordless telephone.
Oh, they don't. Yeah, they don't think that works that way.
Yeah. Like, they don't understand, like, how phone systems work, or like you jump a channel or you jump a tower, someone's paying a termination cost. Who gets that termination cost? How all that work? What is a termination? All of those things. Like, a lot of people have no idea how all those businesses work. And like my telecom background post my phone freaking days definitely helped me in understanding a lot more. But it's interesting.
Do you put that on your resume? Your phone freaking days?
Sometimes I'll list that, avid phone explorer
Great
enthusiast.
answer, by the way.
I love putting the
Sometimes, because
enthusiast.
you really have to tailor your resume for the job. You should have a new resume for every single job that you apply for.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do that. The problem is, like, a lot of times I don't have to fill out much to do work. Like, people contact me to do various projects, that kind of stuff, or help them start something, or, we'll start something. Um, I do, whenever I do a resume, I tailor it accordingly. Like, I'm not gonna put, like, I was doing a lot of phone shit when we're trying to go work for someone that has nothing to do with phones. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, they
Yeah.
don't care. Like, that's great. You understand how to automate an asterisk phone system, set up everything. You have tools to do all this stuff automated. Yeah, great.
Great, sir. This is a Wendy's,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
basically.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I get it.
I mean, I'm not gonna go out there and be like, yes, I used to do device drivers for a cloud gaming company so that we could do real time streaming. Oh no, we had all these custom shit to run with, and people are like, yeah, that doesn't apply. We're just doing software as a service. Like, thanks.
Love it. Yeah, I read the room, I guess, is the best advice there, but I don't know if we're getting too far off topic, so sorry if I hijacked that a
Oh,
little
dude,
bit.
it's fine. There's no topic. We're just here talking about privacy and things and
Oh yeah.
people like. So you'd be surprised how many people are in, our niche levels of crypto and non-niche levels of crypto, or cryptography, encryption, Twitter, social media, other groups, YouTube groups, that kind of thing. What you start to learn is that, like, a lot of these people have actually never really worked in the industry. So, like, a lot of people do like the fact that when you talk about some of this, like, a lot of people don't understand how dangerous startups can be. Like, yeah, they give you equity, but like, they're trying to starve you as a slave. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
the equity game is rough. Like that's one game that I play. I have to. It's the golden handcuffs for those of you that aren't aware.
Yeah.
But I also play it for a company that I, generally speaking, know is not going anywhere anytime soon. A startup. Ooh, I actually almost went to a startup fairly recently, within the past 5 years, and they offered me equity, and I would have gotten royally screwed on it because they sold to another company. I don't want to say the company
Yeah,
names,
it's all good.
but
You
they
don't
sold
have
to
to do
another company, which would have invalidated all of my stock, all of my RSUs.
that.
And so you got to be really careful about that stuff if you get paid in equity.
Oh, dude, one of the first things I do is I'm like, yeah, common stock, sorry. And then they're like, well, it's RSU. And I'm like, that's cool. Well, I'm not budging on what my pay is. Because that's literally how most of the time they try to work it, right? Like, if we're honest here, what they'll do, most companies will be like, oh, we're going to give you this, but we're only going to pay you this. And it's like, that's cool, I guess, if you're fresh out of college or something. If you went to college, I didn't, so I never had to worry about the school debt side of it. But these people come out of college and they see that and they think it's the nerd lottery. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
it can be very, very dangerous for people to get blinded by that, because ultimately, what I tell people, if it's not something you yourself would do or use, don't work for them. Like, for real, just don't. Just because, first of all, you won't have the passion of being somebody who would use said product. And second of all, because of that, you're never going to actually give them your best. And so you don't want to ruin your future, and you also don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're getting screwed over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, passion really is an important piece of everything you do in life. If you don't have passion for something, why bother? Like, and that's kind of um, a position of, what do you call it? Uh, there's a word that I really hate these days, so I always put it out of my head. But it's a position of, I guess, privilege.
Oh
Um,
Jesus.
and I fucking hate that word, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
it kind of is a position of privilege to be able to say, well, I love what I do as a job, or blah, blah, blah. I'm able to pick jobs that I love what I do. But I think anybody can do it, right? Like,
Yeah.
even if you're not terribly skilled, maybe you like interacting with the public, and find a gig that you enjoy, reaching out to the public about privacy, and mix those two things together. But find something that sparks that passion within you, because I've worked both sides of it. I've worked jobs that pay well but are just terrible,
Yeah.
and I've worked jobs that are um, not so great paying, but I love, and I definitely would rather get paid less. But I'm also not. I'm not chasing the dollar at all times either.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a boundary, right? Like, I tell people that you have to have the balance, right? Like when I was younger, and I worked for a certain large telecom company. Um, that company taught me the important. My boss was a cool guy. Here I was, been moved cross country, didn't know this shit from anything. Like working with people I had never even knew some of the slang terms. I've been working with a bunch of old ex-military fucks, right? And so,
Mm,
so literally for me, it was about finding work-life balance because, like, at the ex-military setup and everything, like they believed in like fucking this arduous, startup. What I would later become to me startup life of like 20-hour days, right? But then as soon as I started working in this unnamed telecom company, it was like, nah, dude, at 6 p.m. Like you go home, like don't worry about this unless we got like a release coming or something. Outside of that,
that's
fuck off.
that's surprising though. I don't know if I can't tell if you got lucky with that or not, because I hear conflicting things with startup life, and usually it's the opposite. Usually it's people are like, oh man, yeah, I left startup life because it was too demanding. They just want to be on 40 hours a day, which, you know, obviously I'm exaggerating. 40 hours a day doesn't exist, but you know what I'm getting at, like
Yeah,
the
40-hour
burnout.
weeks, and you want like what we were talking about on Saturday. People want to avoid that burnout, right? Like
Yeah.
for myself, I find that like taking the breaks are good. Like I got one this week. And Tuesday and Wednesday we went out camping and stuff, and then it was great because you get that break. But then like today, I made a couple architectural changes, started going back and like going, okay, you know what, my head's a little clearer. I could look at this pile of spaghetti garbage code that does stuff, and I should probably document it in case I bring somebody on to help or whatnot. Then they need to be able to read and understand what's going on besides seeing massive blocks of Rust code that do things that aren't specific.
Or keep it interesting, and
Yeah.
don't comment anything, and just keep it really insane.
Nah, man.
Uh,
Always treat a code
nah,
base like the person who's inheriting it later after you
yeah,
is a serial
exactly.
killer who
Put them
knows
through
where you
hell.
live.
Yeah, no, I'm not a coder.
Yeah.
I'm just not. That's one of the things I kind of wish that I was better at, is coding and like reverse engineering to the degree that some people are able to do it. Like some of my buddies, holy crap! Like they can just cut through things like Swiss cheese. You're one of them. I mean, you're great at coding. You're competent at what you do. Um,
Thank you, sir.
and like I know that not not writing what you're doing and not commenting stuff is like the bane of your existence, I would say.
You come back months after you wrote it with no comments or anything, and then of course you wrote it in a hurry, so your commit messages look like shit too. Like, yeah, I got this functional. You don't even know what that is because you were like just in a hurry, right? And then you go back and you're like, well, I'm gonna have to rewrite this because I forgot what this is doing now.
Yeah, yeah, good times. I don't know how you do it. Coding, like I said, it's one area that I really wish I was better at. Sadly,
Well, the best advice I can ever give to anybody about it, man, and I mean this, like take to start off with your first week, do 30 minutes, pick a language, read, an hour of a book, go back, do 30 minutes of development without referencing the book as much as you can, and commit that change. You do it again the next day, next day, next day, next day. Then what you kind of do with this process is like the next week you start an hour. And like that doesn't sound like much, but an hour uninterrupted working on software will get you into that like discipline. Like you basically have to train yourself. That's why it's hard if you go too long of a break without doing it to get back into the motion. I mean, because you'll forget what you learned if you don't use it, and that's why it's like pick a language that's versatile, and just make it your bitch. Basically, you can do what you want, and that's what you do. Bitcoin Jake was like, Java's my favorite language. I swore off the stuff. Java's a great language to make you a lot of money in the e-commerce.
He wasn't being ironic when he said that?
No, he actually likes Java. No, he's told me that before.
It doesn't make him a bad person. It just
just makes him a different person.
Java is actually, for anybody looking for career paths out there, Java is actually probably the way to go. I mean, Java runs our world.
Yeah,
it really does.
Yep. Yeah, Java's a good language for that. I mean, like Go is a Java replacement. I mean, because it still has the virtual memory and everything like that. And I don't know. I was working in a lot of places where we were getting millions and millions of requests a second, and we were doing it all with Java. And I was just like, we could do this with a system level language that would be much better at memory management and that kind of stuff. And so, like myself, I prefer the C, C++, and now Rust with the back end stuff. Like, Java's great for e-commerce. Yeah, I'll give it that. But yeah.
Well, I mean, to what I was saying earlier, when I say Java runs the world, with the big corporations and e-commerce platforms, it's all Java, and it's a product of, I think, our lack. I mean, when people say there's a lack of talent in IT and stuff, there is some truth to that. There's always a middle ground, right? There's what he said, what she said, and what the reality is. But when it comes to Java and coding, I would say Java is at every major corporation. I can't think of one that doesn't have it.
And a lot of major corporations also use very old, outdated versions of Java. Like the other day, I went to some site and it was like, I had Java running on this particular user account, and literally what I seen was, it was like, your JVM does not support 1.3, and I'm just sitting there going, wait, what? Somebody's in production right now on a website running Java 1.3. Okay, first of all, impressive. Second of all, like are they running ATG Dynamo or what are they running back there? I mean, because shit, that was, I think it was a DSP page too. So yeah, that would have been DAS. Like you're talking 2003 time frame, 2004 time frame. That would have been acceptable to be cutting edge.
Yeah. To be cutting edge, right?
Yeah.
There you go. And like now we're kind of, I think all of us can admit that we're technology snobs in certain ways, and when we hear Java, we recoil and like. Meh.
It was a meme for so long.
Yeah, that's good stuff though. I hadn't heard that.
Dude, I like I said, Java is, again, it's great. Like I made a lot of money writing Java. I'm not gonna lie, Java was very lucrative. But also you got to work with a lot of interesting things, like all of IoT is Java, so
yeah,
like everything.
it's beneficial to know it,
yes,
for sure. Like I won't lie, I I know how to read it. It's one of those things where I know how to read it. I just don't know how to code it competently, and I'm okay with that. Like
That's fine.
I'm fine with that level of knowledge, because I have no intention of developing an app in Java. And if I ever do need to do that, I'll outsource it.
I mean, the thing is like, for any good security research, learning, security in general, I always tell people it's good to, like, even if you don't like to write a language, to read a language, to be able to understand, like, okay, this is, this is a closure. This is how this language deals with closures. What does a closure mean? How does, this language, like difference between a Java hash map, C hash map, and Rust hash map, and, the various changes from, data sets and things like that, and how this lips works. And so, like,
Sure.
those are important for people to get, because, like, if you can understand that level of it, when you see, C code that may be antiquated from something you're doing research from the 90s, then you'll be able to, understand what they were doing, that kind of thing. Because ultimately, InfoSec, everything is about reading behavior, right? Like, if you see something and it's displaying a behavior as if, improper memory management and things like that, um, then you can explore. I think that's the PC way of saying it, right?
Yeah, or hack the shit out of it.
Yeah, yeah, whatever.
Either way, I don't know what you're swearing.
No, there's no fucking policy on that. I just didn't want to say the word hacker or hacking, because people already give it a bad look. Even though you can sell somebody as a hacker just because they're a developer or something. That's what they do.
I mean, the term has been co-opted by so many at this point that I don't think it means anything to me, other than they are interested in computers. That's what hacking means to me these days, and for better or for worse. I mean, whatever. I really don't. I'm not gonna hate on people just because they use a term the wrong way.
Oh yeah.
That a common theme in my life lately, it seems. But it's semantics and semantics games. That's something. If you really want to annoy me, play those with me. Like I don't call yourself a unicorn or dragon or whatever. As long as you get cool stuff done, that's all I care about.
Yeah.
You're doing cool stuff? Hell yeah. You're a dragon.
Yes, you're whatever you want to be, right? It's the internet. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing I think that, like, you and I have both in our age groups have gotten to see also. The rise of the sensitive internet movement, right? I call it the
Yes.
Yeah, and the reason why is, like, when we got started in the 90s and shit, and you popped on news group, you're like, all 2,600, like, hey guys, how's it going? And someone's like, hey, fuck you, you fuck, you know what I'm saying? And you're like, oh, okay.
Fuck you, you bunch of other F words that we probably can't say these days on some platforms. But I mean, like, the fact is, you needed a thick skin in order to be on the internet. And those days are still here, I think. I feel like you need a thick skin to be on the internet, or else you're going to have a bad time. However, I think there's also a lot of people that have maybe thin skin that are developers of these platforms for social media that are trying to change that, and trying to change it so that the general public and the general internet user base has to abide by these politically correct rules. And I think that's a mistake. I really do.
Oh, I agree. I mean, for myself, I tell people all the time, 4chan is the last bastion of hope for, a near censorship-free platform on the clear net. Like, and mock it all you want, but it's got anonymity baked in, because unless you want to go through the process of getting a username, everybody's a non, and, like, yes, it's simple. Yes, it's crude, but that's how you're able to perform those kind of things, right? Like, there's a trade off. The more fancy you want something, you're going to have to be dealt with, the fact that it has to be funded, those kind of things. It costs money to get developers to write stuff. And, you know, people forget that just because something's free, that there's not a trade off, right? Like, Twitter's pretty good now. The fact that they, for some level of stuff, but their moderation is too high. You see what I'm saying? So like 4chan has like
Yeah.
little moderation, but their interface sucks ass, right? So there's a trade off.
It's funny you bring up the interface too, because I don't think we give interface people enough credit. But I truly believe interface and UX, UI is the reason that Mastodon has not been a formidable challenger to Twitter. There's been a lot of talk about Twitter lately, and it got me thinking, why hasn't Mastodon taken off? We've been talking about Mastodon for like 5 years now. And I think it's the really clean, polished, perfect interface that Twitter brings versus Mastodon, which, just admittedly, it just doesn't bring that to the table. And I think that changes people's subconsciously sometimes. It changes people's decision on whether or not they're going to continue using a product.
Well, I mean, I'll say this much, and I've said it before. I think I said it the other night to you, which was, GPG, a very useful tool, has terrible interfaces for like Linux and things like that. There's no native compatibility. Yet you look at gpgtools.org for the Mac, and if you're a Mac user, I think everyone can unanimously say they all have GPG tools. Yeah, every one of us. Like, it works, it's beautiful, and it's well done. And I
Love it.
It's so simple.
mean,
Anybody
yeah.
can use it.
It detects things in the. Granted, it's not the greatest thing in the world to realize that every app on your system can watch your clipboard, but it's a reality at the moment. But yeah, if it detects a private key or a public key in your clipboard, it'll be like, hey, you want to import this? It makes it so easy to do encryption and decryption and signing. I love it, and I think you get a certain level of it. It seems like the Linux versions are starting to get better, although I just don't use them. But it is still a lot of command line stuff, which is great for us, right?
Yeah.
We don't care. We like command line, but the average user doesn't. The
Yeah.
average user says, "My God, I have to type what? Let me move on to something else. I'll use Telegram," which, by the way, Telegram is absolutely not a good
Yeah.
end solution. It's not really end-to-end encrypted.
Oh yeah, even if you do like the OTR thing that they tried to implement,
Yeah.
I mean, you can still do some sniffing and see that it's making a different endpoint call and some other things. I mean, I may or may not have ran Wireshark to determine that, but basically that's how that works.
Yeah, it's I think Moxie Marlin Spike, or however he pronounces his
Moxie,
name,
yeah.
but he's gotten into fights with what's the guy's name? Dura, I think, or DU something. I actually don't recall the rest of his name, but we'll just call him D from
Telegram.
Telegram. Yeah, he got in a back and forth about whether or not Telegram stores or is able to intercept and store encryption keys for end-to-end conversations. And Moxie dropped full proof that they can do it. And therefore, that's, a lot of people ask me why I don't use Telegram. That's why. I don't like, I especially don't like platforms that are moderately insecure, but then lie about it. Because that tells me there's something even worse going on that we don't even know about.
Oh, of course.
Giraffe, thank you, Diverter.
I mean, that is definitely a problem. I mean, when you look at, like I said, when we were talking about the Internet Act, kind of segued into this, and the evolution of things. Like, I mean, hell, even a year ago, we did a dice party with rolling keys and stuff. Like, most people aren't going to do that, right? Like, so the trade offs and the compromises, like Telegram's easier for most people than Signal, which I still haven't figured out why yet, because to me it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But Signal, obviously being a lot more secure than Telegram, just hasn't gotten the traction. And I think a lot of that again goes back to the interfaces and how they deal with it is a thing. Like, more people have Bitcoin light wallets or SPV style wallets than they actually have full nodes. You know what I'm saying? Because most people look at the QT app and whatnot, and they go, "Oh, fuck this! I'm not going to use it." You look at GPG the same way. You look at everything the same way. Like, all of these software integrations, literally how we interact with them is a big thing. Like you said, Twitter's the interface. Facebook collects way too much data, proven, so people don't want to use Facebook. So
Yeah.
you got Instagram, which is now owned by Facebook, and you got WhatsApp, which is also owned by Facebook, and people just trust those apps as well. And I'm like,
Yeah, not only do people trust those apps, but they have no idea that the apps are owned by Facebook. They have none.
yeah,
Like my in-laws, we were having a discussion about all this stuff, and I just casually mentioned, well, yeah, but Instagram's owned by Facebook, and they're like, what? And they didn't believe me, and like they had to look it up, and they were like, wow, I didn't know this. They didn't care. They didn't uninstall it. They continued using it. But I think it wasn't Instagram going to rebrand as Instagram by Facebook, or did they already do it even?
I don't know. I don't have an Instagram. So my Instagram account that was there from like 2013, I don't have login for. My Facebook account was deleted. I totally forgot about Instagram, but I don't have any way to reset it, and that number not going to do that. So yeah, fuck it.
I had an Instagram for a really short amount of time, and so many bizarre things happened because of that Instagram. But, and I won't get into it because it gets into weird territory. It eventually gets depressing. But it was fine, but it was a really polished interface, and it was really easy to interact with people. But I actually got doxxed by one of my old hacker buddies' girlfriends that has nothing to do with information security. Like, she straight up had no ties to the InfoSec world, and she was somehow able to dox me, and like, it was, I was so impressed by this doxing. She's one of the three people that's been able to dox me, and anyway, she doxes me through Instagram. Of course, it's Instagram. It's a terrible privacy invasive place. So why wouldn't it be the place to get me?
Yeah, I
What'd you say?
I said it's a privacy nightmare. I mean, like that. But a lot of these products that require image storage and things like that, they cost money. So like, they're gonna sell this data. They're going to make money off of it. Like, nothing is free, right? If you pay for something, for a service, then these companies today are still collecting your data, which I find to be fucking crazy. They're not only operating on the free tier model, but they're also harvesting your data to sell elsewhere, and I find that to be atrocious. And again, we just are okay with, most of society is okay with it, and the pressure that these people try to get, like, oh, you need to be on this platform. I actually did a review of a bunch of social media platforms, and I was appalled at what some of them collect today. Like just,
It's crazy, right? Like, did you, by the way, notice that BAM something telemetry collector service? It's in almost every app, but
yeah.
I can't think of the name, and I've been wondering if any of my buddies that have been tearing stuff apart has noticed it. BAM dash something. Is it ringing a bell?
We'll see in a minute. Somebody will chime in, I'm sure.
Oh,
But
you got it. You got it up. Nice.
yeah, the chat. Keep in mind that it's like 30-second delay. So if somebody answers, it may take.
Oh, somebody in chat. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
saw Nixops saying that I'm an Instagram model, and I'll let that one slide. And so I appreciate it.
I mean,
I
the thing
think.
is the phones themselves, like including the software, right? Like, there's so much that you can do with like even Android, and it
Mm,
doesn't require a whole. Well, now they require a lot more permissions, but used to they didn't. Um, and it
there-
was ridiculous, dude. You could get away with so much shit.
I found an app recently that inspired me to totally steal the idea. We can cut that part out, right? I didn't mean
Well,
to
it's a
say that.
live stream, but yeah.
Not totally joking. There's an app though that you can download that it's from the Play Store, I think, and a non-rooted, non-jailbroken device, it will output every single piece of information it's able to glean from your device without you granting any special permissions to it. And it's unbelievable what the fuck apps have access to.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, I was going to create my own version of that. That was cross-platform, because I actually am curious how far the rabbit hole goes.
Well, do we?
I've always
So I can tell you from my experience writing iOS apps that like when you're in iOS land, there are some
Mhm.
strict rules. Apple has some really strict policies about their API calls and what you can and can't do. That's why
Yeah,
it's very hard for an app to get approved. Nonetheless, like actually have them promote in any way because they're very stringent about that. Now they've been under ire from a lot of people, so they've been letting more go through. But it was very rare to ever be able to get away with making too many base level calls. Like if you wanted to get telemetry information because you're trying to verify that someone's moving their finger enough and duration to generate entropy, you want to know that, right? Like to make sure
yeah,
they're not, it's not some device generating a
it's
key.
not a bot,
Yeah.
sure. And they restrict that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I mean, sadly, it makes bot detection harder, but I would rather have bots and privacy than less privacy.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but that's the difference. Also, you have with the walled garden effect, right? Like, you can pave like this. Same with the proprietary Unixes, right? Like in the '70s, '80s, right? When the big iron was the big shit, right? And mainframes and all that. Those walled gardens of like everything were great, but the problem is bugs creeped in, and those issues were solved by a lot of the open source movement, including Stallman's work and everything like that. But like when you break it down, there's always going to be a mix of proprietary and open source software in the world that we live in, and the thing is like you got to try to hold people accountable for what they're doing with some of it. And I mean, it's like a lot of companies now are trying to even demonstrate by open sourcing everything or attempting to open source everything so people can see what's going on, to try to build those trusts and things like that. And
Yeah,
it's eroded away.
I think one thing that I'll uh, I'll plug if you don't mind
Go ahead,
is
man. Plug all you want.
it's just an idea at the moment because sadly I've been kind of going through some things that have been really taking a lot of my time and like pulling back the fourth wall for a moment. Uh, Nixops and I had a Twitter conversation about 5 minutes before the show started because I had just woken up from a multi-day coma. It seemed it wasn't actually, but it was just I've been out of the loop for days, and was able to pull it together to do the stream, and I'm glad I did because I'm having a great time.
Thanks for coming
But
on, by the way.
yeah, man, anytime. I I think uh, the point I was trying to get to was I have I have an idea for a thing, and man, I still am waking up. So
Thing.
wow, I
So
can't believe
much
I lost
descript.
the thought. Well, that idea is doomed. Let's put it that way. It was a good one too. It's something that I'm actually going to pursue, and I'll just have to tweet it out once I have more infrastructure in place for it. But it's going to be something that I think a lot of people will like, and it's for privacy and stuff. But let me put it back to you, the host.
All right,
Let you
so
drive for a bit.
all right, cool. So we were asked a few questions. So let me pull them up real quick. So we were asked, what was it? What
Like
do we
Terry
think
Davis
about the
template OS agents. Nice.
Yeah, what do we let's see, what do you guys think about the checkmate exploit for A11 chips? Did it ruin iPhone X security? Um the
Yeah.
the
I
problem is
got you.
now the problem with that is that like exploits there have always been exploits. It's just whether or not you can invoke them in the wild and on demand. Right? Like that's why companies look at bug bounties as like, okay, well, if it took you 25 layers of shit to get, a cookie session ID, cool. Well, that threat model to us is very low because it literally took you this long to do it. So unless they plan to profit, they'll treat the bug bounty that way. And ultimately, like hackers do the same thing because if you're looking at buying and selling exploits on markets, I don't know if anybody's ever done that in the past, or I'm not saying I have, but I have done my research. Um, Literally, what you got to do is you got to look at it from the standpoint of can it be invoked on demand? And if it can, that's where your real value is. I don't think it's ruined security unless someone can do it when they want to a phone that they target in perimeter or non-perimeter. Once you can do that, that's valuable.
Yeah, I think the zero click exploits are the hotness, and they always will be, right?
Yeah.
Like having a zero click, and for those of you unfamiliar with the term, quickly zero click is when you can either send a text message or preferably a nothing to the phone that the user sees and gain access to it. Uh, and I believe that includes root. This is from the exploit vendors like ZeroDM and a few of the others. And that's a scary type of exploit. I mean, that means that somebody can send you one of those spammy looking text messages, but instead of it just being spam like you thought, it actually just rooted your phone.
Well,
That's a problem.
like web preview, for example, like
Yeah.
that's a huge vector, right? Like a lot of people, um, like there's a Unicode bug now, still out there, by the way, because I can't get their shit together. That you can actually take and literally craft a Unicode that will translate into Apple, for example. Someone did that with Apple.com, and they were serving out misinformation and stuff. And the reason they did that was to demonstrate that the browser redirect will go to that site. So a message preview would translate it as being the correct site. So even then, phishing gets more sophisticated.
True. You're talking about homoglyph attacks, right?
Yeah.
Like domain homoglyph. Yeah, those are scary. I've been trying to find a domain registrar that'll let me register those because I've got a few good ones that are like they're really good, and that was not a white power symbol that I just did right now. That was like that was an okay symbol. But I'm gonna get screenshotted, and people are gonna be like, "Dan's a white supremacist."
Nah, I ain't gonna say
Cancel Dan.
that.
But no, I'd say there's definitely the phishing type attacks, but the zero click exploits are the ones that scare me. And I know with any kind of renderer like MP3, video, MPEG-4, I know there's tons of just any device driver that renders video or audio or of any kind is you should be suspicious of it. And sadly, that's the world we live in. It's like a world filled with mines. It's a minefield out there.
Well, it's because of how when things are rendered, you have to use such properties as unsafe for like the way memory is handled. Because if you try to use strict memory, a lot of times, sometimes processes that, for example, decompressing something could not work as well as they do because instead of allowing a file, it's got to be like knowing a compile time kind of thing. There's some trade-offs. So like when you're rendering code, a compiler is doing something. So when a compiler can be used in a production environment, right, is dangerous. So like that's where these exploits kind of happen, like where you're talking about the zero click. The same thing. The message is read, and it gives that's supposed to take action. And what those actions are dictated by rules and SLA policies and all of this stuff. And like when a lot of people don't realize is that there's so much going on those little devices at times. But then when you see a zero click like that, or you see like someone exploiting how the rendering works in any way, you're like, wow, someone has a lot more time than I do to be doing that. You know what I mean? like that research.
Man,
but it's the Lord's work.
There's some people that just that's all they do, right? Is research. And truly research. Like I have in my Twitter profile, by the way, I spell security and research wrong in my Twitter profile, and that's for a reason. But they actually do the security research all day, every day, and they're the ones that are developing PDF zero clicks that if a PDF comes in as an attachment to your email, you don't even need to open the email. The PDF is being viewed, for lack of a better term, by the email software, yep. And it pops it right there. Doesn't even need to be opened.
Yeah, I mean that's the dangers that we run into. Like someone could find a bug in SendMail and find a way of having an attachment do that, and quite literally, boom, the whole server's now compromised. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a worse attack.
True.
Like instead of a target attack, I always think about like a lot of people overlook the fact that some of this stuff isn't as well like in the FOSS world that we live on, because most people aren't even helping fund SendMail, even though like literally every mail service in the fucking world uses it. You know what I mean? And it's ridiculous. Like they forget that what they're making money on is also something they have to support.
Mm-hmm. And so you triggered me by saying FOSS. You actually reminded me of my thought that I had earlier, and it's truly a project that I am organizing, and I just didn't have my notes in front of me, but I want to put together a crowd-funded payment of whatever dollar amount we can get to put towards a proper review of the top technologies that are open source that the internet and us as citizens run on. And what I mean by that is like OpenSSL. OpenSSL probably the top, right? OpenSSH.
Another good one.
Anything that's cryptography related that's like hard for us to understand as even privacy advocates, even coders. We don't have enough generalization that we can say we're experts in every single one of those topic areas, but there are companies out there that have experts in each area and can delegate out a proper security review for these open source things. And I think what we would find if we were to execute this idea is Tor project is full of bug doors, and probably every single other cryptography related open source tool is full of bug doors, and we need to close the fucking door on those.
So
We
you
need
know
to get
what?
rid of those.
I'll help you on that. I think we could get enough people to want to do that because like this is stuff that really does run our world. Like look at the Epoch time, right? Like that fucking piece of shit. Be, yeah, no one even knows what I'm talking about. But Unix Epoch is a thing. There is an end to that, and literally all these devices still are using antiquated time in network time. So yeah, like I think it would be smart, especially if it's community ran, just because like in the spirit of that community, we do that, right? Like and
Yeah.
yeah,
And I mean,
I'd
like,
love to help
like
out.
I'm not opposed to hiring a for-profit company to do it,
No, it's a
but I think the
501(c)(3).
community should be driving
Yeah,
that process.
yeah, definitely. I think they should. But like you take a look at the donations for stuff, and people are not really helping out open source, and so bugs do happen. Some people are out there in their free time and stuff, and that's cool. And again, everybody appreciates you, but reality is like you said, we do need that kind of audit, and those audits are important because not only are we going to get a CINA, but now we can delegate work to get these bugs fixed,
Yeah.
and people can take it upon themselves to help out to get them fixed, patch, and then do proper disclosure for some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because you don't want a bunch of 0 days going off either, and like that's the problem with like Heartbleed. Heartbleed was so big, it was just fucking crazy. Oh well, that's because Pastime Kramer. I have a better
Yes.
mic, but it's because I'm not an audio visual guy,
You
and
sound fine, dude.
yeah, but he's saying he's having a problem, so it doesn't sound
Yeah,
good.
whatever. Fuck the audience. That's what I say.
Well, we did,
Fuck the audience. No, I'm just kidding. I love you guys.
but
But seriously,
yeah,
like,
Tor does have its fair share of bugs, and I think that a lot of people really need to spend time to do that, man. So like, I want to help you is what I'm getting at.
okay,
So
right on.
yeah,
Hell yeah, dude. I'm down. I want to make sure I literally have to develop a business plan, and I have to develop a oh man, I'm gonna forget the acronym, but a statement of work, an SOW, to present to these companies and say, look, we're not actually fucking around. We're not joking. We want to pay you $20,000 to audit this code base. What can we do to make this happen? And if anybody out there, I notice there's a decent amount of people watching right now. So if there's anybody out there that um, is in contact with, works for, or knows of code audit companies, there's not that many.
there's really
Surprisingly.
not. You got like Black Duck and probably about 10, 15 other small companies.
Hmm.
And Black Duck's
Um,
just a big company that really, they do a bunch of sweeps. They do some open source related stuff. I'm not sure, but I have a
that's the thing,
yeah,
is they do some black box test. I'm talking generally. These companies do black box testing and stuff like that, but they don't really actually dig into source code. There's very few companies that actually do that. And a free idea, if you want to start a company and you're good at this, put together a company like that, and you're gonna have a lot of instant customers. Trust me.
yeah, really, you will. I mean, like, yeah, you take like 4 people who are really proficient in 4 languages and just go to town. Yeah, you pretty much eat up all of Silicon Valley, right? You just need Go, Python, some Java, and some Rust these days, and boom, you got the whole valley. I mean, literally, you would, and
Yeah.
like you cover the spectrum of what they're working on, and yeah, you Shit, you wouldn't even need seed funding. You probably just do it self-starting. Bootstrap that bitch. Be worth a couple of million in like 6 months. But you would have so much work, it wouldn't even be funny.
Yeah, honest to God, it's ridiculous how much business is just waiting for there to be a company to do it. And if you don't believe me, put together a company, and like, it's not hard. Building a company, in my opinion, is actually pretty easy. Like, granted, there's some parts to it that are hard, but like literally making yourself a corporation and like building a website and a domain name and getting a phone number, that shit's easy. We're hackers. This is like easy stuff. You can do it in a week. But if you were to do it, you will have customers by the end of the month.
Shit, it won't even be that long if you can just say, hey.
Yeah.
And what you would get into, though, is like if some people wanted to do that, and my advice to them would be create tooling around this, and then literally that way you can open source the tooling. Everybody benefits because now they can scour their own repositories. And, yeah, people say, oh, you can't make money as open source business. Yes, you can. You just got to know what you're doing, and you got to position yourself correctly. And it's a hard sell. It can be, but at the same time, if people who understand software, investors, things like that, they already know how this shit works, right? Like they're like, if the only reason there are users is because it's open source, you can provide yourself as a servicing platform, that kind of thing too. There's no shame in doing that. People, gotta understand.
Agreed.
You gotta turn lights on, right? And compile time isn't cheap either, right? Like, we all joke about it, but like a 7-minute compile time, and you got people waiting to test and everything. 7 minutes drags on,
Yeah.
And
7 minutes is not 7 minutes. It's 7 minutes of
yeah. Is it gonna work?
Getting your brain ready to do that, getting your headspace right, writing things out. Like, 7 minutes is an hour in my world.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it builds, because that's the other thing in the back of your mind. Like, is this fucking thing gonna build? I know I just merged the code and it built, but is something else is gonna fuck up before we push this shit, right? And you're just like, oh fuck, here it comes. But then it builds, get all this other stuff done, and then meanwhile you're just like, okay, cool. And then you're reminded that you still have not really done shit. It just built that branch. You still have to push that motherfucker out. And when you do, you're like, fuck, something's going to break. Race condition incoming, something. Who knows?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I agree. It's a minefield. Yeah, everything in infosec and technology is a minefield. It's all bad. I'm just kidding. I'm having a good upbeat day, so everything's great.
That's good. I mean, yeah, like the businesses and everything, privacy-focused stuff has gone to the wayside. Like, that's why Samurai. I've been telling going to refer to a question here. So we got asked what someone would run with Bitcoin and Tor, and thing is like, I don't know. It depends on how serious you are about Tor, right? I think you can agree with this. If you're not going to route all your traffic through Tor, don't just route one device's traffic through Tor, because it's quite literally giving an indicator that it's a specialized device, or that kind of thing. So you're already an identifier on a network, right? Like,
I actually haven't been looking at the chat, and I didn't hear exactly what you said. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, sure. So Billy had asked a little while ago, but we got on talking about the zero clicks and stuff, and I was trying to go through most of these questions. Billy had asked what was the best way of staying safe, like Bitcoin, Node, and Tor, and I was just going to say that basically it doesn't matter how you use Tor, you have to use it correctly, or it's like not using it at all. And what I mean by that, and I'm sure you'll feel the same, if you're not routing all your traffic through Tor, don't just use Tor for a specific device on your network, because quite literally you will create an identifying mark as to the MAC address and how those routes and everything were added to your router and all of that kind of information. So it's better to have it from the router going outbound than it is to
Mhm.
have individual devices. Or how do you feel about that?
Um, I I'm a little more liberal when it comes to that stuff these days, and so one thing I will say is you touched on routers for a brief second, and all commercial routers, especially residential routers, are essentially,
Spy
I don't know
devices.
if I would call it a bug door necessarily, but they're at least bugs. And there's an RCE in almost every single one that's on the market today. That's something that I've heard secondhand. I don't have verifiable proof of that, but I've heard it from enough people that know that industry that I believe them. And so I would say using things like PF Sense or Open, what's the one?
Open
Open,
WRT, DDWRT, those
yeah,
drop-in
anything like that.
replacements. I mean,
And
also
not to
you could
say
just
that
use
they don't have,
NetBSD too, because NetBSD will compile on fucking anything.
yeah, it will. I love that BSD. I love any of the BSDs. But that's not to say that those don't have their share of bugs as well. They probably do, but um, an attacker, even a determined attacker, is going to take some time to figure out, as long as you have your firewall rules set up properly. They're going to take some time to figure out that that's what you're running, how your setup is, and just uh, keep things stable, keep things not too exotic, but don't be afraid to run PF sense. Don't be afraid to run things like uh, that are a little more advanced, but provide you granularity and the level of control over your network that you should have.
Yeah, of course. I
And
mean,
never run PU PNP, by the way.
yeah, like universal plug and play. Like people, again, um, there are exploits that exist for like Comcast routers. I may or may not have a few, but you can do some pretty damaging things. And all you really need to know is that they have an API server on that bad boy. And for whatever reason, they're also permitted to run as a super user. So it doesn't make sense how they did their framework on it, but you can do some nasty things like, you know, invoke a root shell, that kind of thing, to their console manager without needing an actual account. Those kind of things can happen on Comcast routers and some others. And it's like
Mm,
I agree with you on telling people to run PF Sense and things like that. I think it's better for people to get those kind of exposures, but I also think going back to our UI discussion, it has to be simple. Like literally, I think that the reason
sadly.
privacy and all of these tools that can save people these types of questions are complicated. You don't have a wizard like, look, I know my kid needs this port open for his dumb fucking game. That's all. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. It should be
Yeah.
that Crayola of a wizard to set up for people, but it's not. None of it is.
Yeah, it's so for that specific area though. When we come to talking about Tor and stuff like that, um, at the moment at least, Tor. Although what you that's why I really dig what you're doing. Tor, generally speaking, is a geek's game.
Yeah.
It's not something that my grandma's going to set up. It's not something my mom's going to set up. It's not something my uh, boyfriend's even going to set up. Like, and he does IT stuff. Uh, but it's something that you and I will set up, and something that I
Yeah.
guarantee most of your audience will set up. And because of that, it can be ugly. It doesn't have to be necessarily so pretty. I think the draw to Twitter, and the reason that Twitter and Mastodon and things like that need to have that polish, is because the normies are what makes those platforms great in the end. Um,
Yeah, but those normies are the ones who also are paying for those platforms by relinquishing more data. You know, a lot of people don't realize that.
It's true.
You have niche groups, like oftentimes I hear people talk about, oh, Telegram secure signal. I need something that's distributed and decentralized. Cool, Bit fucking message has been around for a long time, and there's still people that use that. Like it's almost like we forgot about tools that existed. Like retro share. Okay, like I still use that from time to time with my groups, right? And a lot
Hmm.
of people don't even know what the hell retro share even is.
I don't know. What is it?
So it's like you run a client and other people can connect. It's GPG, public-private key set, and basically you share files, forums, conversations like IRC and stuff, and it's doesn't work. I mean, you can also set up on private mode where it only works on your network routes, that kind of stuff. Disable what IPs and contacts and whatever you can do. I mean, there's a lot.
Nice. It sounds like kind of DC with security.
Yeah, I don't know about DC but like literally, I mean, it's been around for a long time. I mean, in the early days of BTC, that's what we used. That and IRC. IRC was for public stuff. Retro share, you
Yeah.
could share files, whatever, and everybody kept a copy. And it was easier that way for certain material like blueprints and shit. But
I think that's the perfect. You walked right up to the watermark, and or the high level mark, and left it right at the place you should leave it at. But
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. I'm actually going to check it out. To be honest, I had not heard of that before. Retro share. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, do
Interesting.
you remember when, like, I mean, I remember in the 2013 timeframe, there was a bunch of cool, interesting work being done, and then, like, one of my favorite disposable browser tools, and I hate that he later changed it to a desktop client, which was CryptoCat. I don't know if you had ever used it, but CryptoCat by Nadeem was actually really useful for a lot of people because, Bitcoin dealers and things like that, like literally it was just this quick instant chat. And you
Mhm.
always went through, Tor with the lowest security settings. You were just basically trying to mask where you're fucking coming from. And then you try to do that and you carry on conversations where you're mean and things like that. But, good tools, they come, they don't keep support, and then they still get utilized, or would be utilized, but then they're not. And some go away, some don't, and that's kind of like going back to what you were talking about, starting the company to audit this open source code. Like all of
Yeah.
those are important for the success of, majority of the tools being used today, whether it be Tor, whether it be, like what Samurai is doing, or whether it be, even even like I2P, but I don't think anybody uses I2P anymore. Um,
No, unless you want to use, if you want to experience what we had to experience growing up as kids with 56K modems, feel free to install I2P because that's the only takeaway I have from I2P. And I know there will be a bunch of hate that I get for saying that.
oh, don't feel bad. I'll
There's
say
a lot.
it. I agree with you, man. It's
I appreciate it, but there's a lot of people that really like I2P and want it to succeed, and so do I. It's another privacy platform that seems relatively secure, and it actually seems like it does not have a lot of, we'll call it government intervention, whether it be U.S. government or not. There is plenty of bad smells around Tor project.
oh yeah.
I don't get that same sense around I2P.
Well, I mean,
So
you obviously are because like a lot of people forget it was a naval project first and foremost, right? Like
sure.
all of that derives from the truth that it did start as a government project. Now, the important part is that there's also a catch-22 with that. You have to worry about them having security bug doors and things like that, but then you also have to remember on that same token if they have that same ability to review the code and what all these exits and and guards and everybody are running and hidden services, then quite literally if they have a back door, then someone else probably also has that back door. So like you have to
Yeah.
like so because they do use Tor in deployments and stuff. It is something that has been used and still is from time to time, more often than we give it credit for. But like those are also very vital roles is in an adversarial condition is that you want your code to be out there, so you have people finding these bugs, and then also so that you're fixing them, and then also you have yours. But if you have yours and you're not disclosing them to be fixed, they could be leveraged against you. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so you have this trade-off, and it's important.
Hmm. You brought up something interesting that I'm not going to talk about, but I'm going to look into, and I'll disclose it later. But
All right.
it basically comes down to looking for indicators of that condition, right? Looking for indicators of, does somebody have a 0 day in Tor or X project, whatever it is? How are some ways that you can tell? And I guess I did just talk about it and give it away.
Well, I mean, I think that would be a great topic, because there are a lot of things like in these privacy networks, Tor being the most prolific, where you do see people attempting to run like MITM proxy, things like that on exits and on servers, and you know, and it's scary because like at the same time, you don't know if that's just a bad individual or if that's a nation state attempting to collect data. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so like that's you as the user of a particular privacy network notice this type of behavior. It's something that you want to call out because there's adversaries, but adversarial distributed networks can become compromised when things get too big or too handled, right? So you got to look at it from, what regions are things happening in, and it's hard. It's hard. And I2P, like you said, is 56K modem, and I get that, but Jesus, dude, like it just also isn't as quite user friendly yet. Like where the click and setup and it's ready to go. Um,
Not at all, dude.
but
I still don't think I've successfully set up I2P correctly. And I've tried a couple times now. I gave up on it, obviously, and re-imaged the VPS. But I'm fairly confident I never actually got it running properly.
See, I got it running, but like I said, man, like it was cumbersome, and then it wasn't something that I could help people with, who lack certain knowledge of, being able to like fire up a terminal or something. You know what I'm saying? It's, I mean that, like,
Hey, no, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I seem to recall there being, and maybe it's because I do a lot of preemptive protection through routing and VPNs and stuff, way before or way down my network pipe. So I2P would be like way back here, and then it goes through a series of tubes out through my internet egress to the internet. And I think it may be because of that complex setup that there's a issue on my end.
oh well, that could be it. I mean, I go through, I go through VPN, and well, depends. If it's something that I have questions on what I'm doing, then I'm going to my own VPN. Otherwise, I use Proton's VPN because, yeah. Like if I'm going to shitpost on 4chan, I'm going through mine because half of Proton's IP addresses are blocked, listed off 4chan.
Right?
So I just go
Dude, man, they've gotten fucking hammered. And it that speaks somewhat to their ability
to not
to
give a
not
shit.
log.
Yes.
Because clearly they're not banning the accounts that are hacking through them.
Yeah.
But one that I found a service, and I'm not advocating for them because I don't know enough about them yet, but I've been testing them, is Malvad. They have really good upstream throughput, which is great for streaming. And they also don't disconnect every stream. So shouts to Malvad so far. They use WireGuard, which I don't know. What are your thoughts on WireGuard?
My thoughts on the VPN services have not. I mean, I have only really set them up handfuls of times, like OpenVPN. I've used WireGuard as well, but like they're all kind of the same to me. Like when you're just trying to get the baseline usage out of it, right? Like,
Yeah, well, they are, right? And so my question has always been, why use it then? Why use WireGuard, this relatively unknown and new technology that may have a few improvements for speed and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's brand new. We don't know much about it. There's plenty of room for there to be issues that we've never even thought of or heard of before.
well,
That
I
that's
think a
where
lot
it,
of that boils down to, like I said, speed and experience. If you give someone a tool and you say this is faster, but it accomplishes the same task, even just from a slightly demonstrable standpoint, people will buy into it, right? The thing is like real VPN or real obfuscation of the origin is going to be sluggish to some level. Like there will always have to be that because you're essentially changing the route. It would be much more complicated the faster something is to really verify that it's true because are you sniffing all the packets? Are you for sure getting all of them? And how do you know? Because quite literally, are they just operating, and different payloads, or what are they doing to make that compromise? And you know what I'm saying? Like speed.
no, I'm sorry, I don't. Can you kind of rephrase it?
So what I was saying is that like if something's fast, and you're looking at proper routing, to do proper routing to obfuscate the origin, right, without DNS spoofing, things like that, you would literally have to sacrifice some of your speed because it has to go through another hop. Same thing with any other types of distributed network. The more
Sure.
hops, and that's what I'm getting at is that like you can't compromise the speed. If you get too fast, you should question as a user what the compromise is. You see what I'm? That's
I
what.
see. Yeah, that's a good point. I will say though, Proton and Malvad both have, and maybe it's just because of the place that I live. Like I literally live in the middle of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Google's 10 minutes away. Like all the tech companies are right here. I'm sort of doxing myself, but sort of not. Um, so they're all right here, and my ping times latency is like next to nothing to begin with. And so if I put a VPN on, like I have Malvad on right now, and I'm running through 2 hops before I get to internet egress,
Okay.
and I'm at about 22 milliseconds
Okay.
to 1.1.1.1. And I mean that's the go-to, by the way, in my opinion,
The Cloudflare.
for testing latency. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's also been called into question too, though, right? Like, because that's something we've avoided, like, launching exits was that to avoid completely using Cloudflare from an upstream provider.
Good
And
on you. By the way, have you noticed that? I'm sure you've noticed, but we should talk about it real quick. That Tor project and Tor bundle comes by default set up to use, I think it's 8.8.8.8, which is Google, is it not?
yeah, that's Google's 8.8.8.8 is Google. And then they also have 8.8.8.4.4, if I recall. Yeah.
Eh, But I mean, that's in the default Tor RC, isn't it? For
Well,
setting up an exit node?
yeah. Well, saying on the exit node, the default is actually it's set to 8.8 or no, the defaults now you have to define them. There's a little function that they have in there to do the auto, but we use upstream and then we use a multitude of DNS providers. So we do a
Well,
random set.
but for the alt, I mean,
For
sad.
you're talking about for the Tor browser, the browser, yeah, it defaults to Google because that's what Firefox actually does.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow, I didn't know that.
yeah.
No,
So
I actually meant the Tor node though. Tor nodes, from what I recall, the browser, or not the browser, the Tor bundle for setting up an exit relay or an exit node, had the DNS resolver
yeah,
8.8.8.8.
that's been a few years ago. It hasn't been recent. Because
Oh,
Because
good.
yeah, literally, yeah. When we were doing the DNS changes, now it just calls in the local DNS for the server itself. so it doesn't even populate them. I mean, you can define them if you want
Makes
to,
sense.
but it may, yeah.
That's like that was the craziest thing to me is that it didn't do that. But I'm happy to hear that they fixed that.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was also a bug in older version of the Tor browser itself. It would literally go to, depending on where you installed it at, there was an old config bug that you could make people like refer to McAfee DNS, and like you could fuck with that one because they were vulnerable to an art poisoning attack. So people would fuck with that all the time. And so like
Wonderful.
you would just ship it because it would still technically have the same signature. Nobody would even question it. You would just make sure that network is art poison, point to McAfee, fucking do your work.
Good deal. In a really sad way. And yeah, I'm actually looking at the documentation right now at communitytorproject.org. And shouts to them for closing that hole because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm like, what the fuck? You're putting all your traffic through Google? What is going on here? This is egregious.
Well, so
But
what's like everybody's starting to put traffic through said their name is
Cloudflare.
Cloudflare. So
Yeah,
at what point do we have more compromises on that? I mean, ultimately another big DNS name needs to come into play too.
I think yeah, and Quad 9. So there's a couple of them, right? There's Google OpenDNS, Quad 9, Cloudflare, and a couple others, like 4.2.2.2, which
Yeah.
hopefully nobody uses them anymore because man, they really turned into shit. It's GTE, I want to say, but they hijack your like if you type a domain that isn't registered, it'll hijack the DNS request and send you to their domain registrar.
Yep,
It's amazing.
AT&T does that. Comcast does that too. If,
That's sickening. Like it should be illegal. It really should.
well, it
And
was supposed to be illegal, like right, like these ISPs get away with a lot of stuff because they're able to basically be, hey, well, find someone else that's going to service this area because they all have basically contracts, right, for some cities. So that's why you only have competition from certain places in certain regions, right? Like California, and other places there, like Oregon, or actually no, it would be Washington and most of the Bay Area. Comcast has a chokehold on ISP.
oh yeah,
And
totally.
that's because no one can operate on their cabling, and there's no leases. Sure, you got some AT&T, but like literally those places are in strangleholds with Comcast for being the preferred provider because they're faster, and it's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, like as far as the DNS things, AT&T will do it, Comcast will do it. Almost every home ISP will now start doing that. So I mean, I look for mobile providers. I think they've been instructed not to do it. So I mean, I look for that to one day change. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's true. Well, they were specifically instructed to not do any kind of inspection of customer
Payloads.
network traffic.
Yep.
Huh.
Well, that was one of the compromises on privacy. Now they technically record it, but they don't have it like in the sense of knowing that you made a DNS request. That failed. They just see that you made a request.
Well,
If they don't get a
but
response
are
back,
they
they would
allowed to
obviously be able
record
to
it?
tell. Huh?
Are they allowed to record it?
Well, all
I
data
thought,
is recorded through ISP channels. Like you have to remember, anything, all of that's recorded.
well, through ISPs, yes.
But technically through
Through
cellular, no.
cellular?
I think they, well, since most of our
I
cellular
think you're right.
providers are ISPs, they fall under the governance for that.
Well, yeah, they might. There might be actually something to that. I'm
Yeah.
actually going to take a note from this and research that because that would be huge. Cellular companies can no longer inspect internet traffic, and regardless of the fact that, yeah, you're right, one could argue they are ISPs, but they're not, right? Because cellular carriers fall under this weird gray area where they're considered a utility, and internet companies like Comcast and any internet company is not a utility yet. There's been a big push on Twitter for the past 6 years, make internet a utility. And I've always kind of brushed it off and been like, yeah, whatever. I'm starting to think, especially now with the crisis stuff that we're in, we're dealing with the COVID and whatnot, it should be a utility, because you cannot survive in this tech based world without it. You just can't.
Yeah, I mean, and ISPs are notorious for it. I mean, and like literally, one of the best OPSEC tools I can give anybody, whether you're on your phone or your home ISP, be careful if you're only using Tor certain hours or you're only using a VPN for certain hours, things like that. If it is not constantly on or not constantly what you do, you're literally giving indicators that you may be doing something that you're not supposed to. So,
Yeah,
and people
absolutely.
don't understand how much monitoring goes on, but literally they know. That's why they're able to get onto you if you're running an exit node. They start seeing traffic to your house, and they're like, "No, you can't do that," because most consumer level ISP plans have strict wording where you can't host a website, you can't host certain things, that kind of stuff, and so like you have to be very careful about that. And
Yeah.
and that's also a risk, right? Like, I don't know about you, but like back in the day, we had phone lines right into the house, and whatever you did with that line outside of them being there, they didn't care. Like, and realistically, they didn't. You want to, daisy chain it, run several phones off the same thing. They didn't care because that was just whatever. They were responsible to getting it there.
Yeah.
Whatever you fucking did, that's all on you. And I think we got away from that where everybody in the consumerism model is these people come in, they set it up, they don't want you to touch the box, they don't want you to know what's running on there, they don't give you any information. And then, yeah, they provide a service that's realistically really shitty and does a bunch of other shitty things to us, like DNS
It's
hijacking and
I
collection data.
I think making them a utility, the more and more we talk about this right now, at making internet a utility would solve all of this, because it would put them under FCC regulations. It would put them under more strict FTC regulations, and force them to abide by the same things that other companies don't have to abide by. And the cable companies have gotten away with this because the cable companies are cable modem providers. And when you run NBC, Universal, all of these media companies, you have unlimited funds. But that's not to say that you're too big to be fucked with.
Yep.
And by fucked with, I mean regulated. And so maybe that's something that we really need to start supporting collectively as hackers and white hats and whatever, is getting behind EFF and whoever else is saying make internet a utility.
I think so too. I think it's a good move, and then like ultimately these people are monetizing off that data too. Like, and it's really sad that the company you're paying to provide you a service is also taking what you're using their service for and profiting the fucking shit out of it, all at
Yeah,
your own
that's the thing.
expense.
I was That's the thing I don't understand about all these people that say, "Oh, you're so stupid for using a VPN at DEF CON, let alone using a VPN at all." It's like, hello. First of all, I don't want to be another number that's giving my carriers money for selling my data.
Yep.
That's a reason enough alone. And yes, I get that there's VPN providers that sell data, but I would argue I haven't seen any indicators that Proton's been able to sell my data, and if they have, they've done a really good job at keeping it quiet, because I put canaries everywhere.
Yeah, we all do. I mean, it, and the canary is an important thing. A lot of people really don't take heed to them. I mean, and major catastrophes happen when they don't. And,
Yeah.
like, it's it's very, very funny to watch them because like companies just brush it off. Oh, I don't need to worry about that. We're running this version. Well, you should still verify that it's not capable. Like, is the fix there? You know, that kind of thing. But like in the world that we live in, man, these companies are collecting data, meanwhile running shitty software that's extremely vulnerable, all under the guise that we need this product to be treated this way so that we can be mistreated to use it. Consumerism.
Yeah, consumerism and capitalism, right? It's just amazing. And like I don't want to be one of those
Yeah,
guys that's like capitalism's bad. Capitalism's awesome. It
it
makes
is.
people rich.
Yes.
As long as you're on the right side of it, capitalism's great.
Yes.
But it's also unchecked capitalism, not so great.
Yep.
But that goes for anything. Unchecked power is never a good thing.
All right. Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, anytime you're the product, it's never going to end well for you either. You know, that's the other thing. And so there's nothing that's free. There's a trade-off and compromise. And you know, that's the way the world we live in right now. And, you know, we got to try to bring it into to making this stuff more accessible. And again, going back to good design but again, the good designs have trade-offs, and ultimately we always have to be mindful of the trade-off, you know. And it's you know, software is constantly evolving, but at the same time we're taking 3 steps back every time we move forward, you know. Like, hey, we got this to do something better, but now we got, you know, 3 steps back going, fuck it, what do we do? But Dan, I was going to wrap up here in a moment, and I want to tell you thank you for coming on. I love to talk, and I'll have to jump back on on your show one night again and chill and talk, and maybe we'll have some fun with some phone numbers from the obscure bank, some old stuff. But thanks for coming on, and you got anything that you wanted to shill or anything you wanted to say before we got going?
Not too much. I want to thank you for having me on. I apologize for not being in contact too much over the past few days and leaving you kind of hanging as to whether or not I was going to make it, but I made it. So I'm glad I did, because this has been a great conversation. These are the conversations I love. Just kind of hanging out, and that's really kind of what we're about over at Hacker Rehab. It's a little bit of a riddle as to what Hacker Rehab is and how to find it, but my best advice is, and it's not a ploy to get you to subscribe, but just go to my Twitch or go to my Twitter or whatever, and just set alerts on Twitch at least, and that'll at least send you an email when we go live. But I mean, yeah, having you on, hell, 2 days from now, if you want to come on and talk some more on Hacker Rehab, you're more than welcome. And same goes for anybody that's listening. If you got something interesting you want to talk about, especially buddies of the show, there's plenty of buddies of the show that are checking out this stream, and shout to, I see No Self in there and a bunch of others. You guys are all welcome. I mean, it's a community effort. I run the buttons. I make the things happen audio-wise. But other than that, without an audience, I'd probably still do it, honestly, just because I'm not in it for fame. Actually, I really hope fame doesn't come. But I like being able to talk about interesting things and have an outlet creatively, because at the end of the day, we're all characters. We're all just playing a character, and none of what we say is real. None of what we say is based in reality, fact, or blah, 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 lawyer.
Lawyer needs speak. Yes. Thanks again for coming on, man. And yeah, like I said, you know, I'll definitely pop back into Hacker Rehab sometime. And then also, we're going to have to go on a little field trip one day soon so we can play with some toys I got brewing up right now. So
wonderful. I can't wait. That excites me. Let's